The great hall of the Galactic Council buzzed with quiet conversation. Representatives from across the galaxy sat in their floating seats, waiting for the newest member species to present their contribution to the Coalition Defense Fleet. The humans had been accepted into the Council only 6 months ago, and today they would show what they could offer in the fight against the growing threats in space. Ambassador Sarah Chen stood at the center of the massive chamber. Her simple blue uniform looked plain next to the shimmering robes of the Zephyrians and the biomechanical suits of the Nexari. Above her head, a holographic projector hummed to life, casting the image of a large spaceship into the air. The ship was huge, nearly 2 kilometers long and half as wide, but it looked old, very old. The hull was made of basic metal and ceramic plates, scarred and patched in dozens of places. Large gun turrets stuck out from its sides like the spines of some ancient beast. No energy shields glowed around it. No quantum drives sparkled beneath its hull. It was just metal, guns, and engines. The chamber fell silent. Then someone laughed. Counselor Vextar of the Zephyrians tried to cover his mouth, but his crystal-like features made it hard to hide his amusement. His people had ships made of living crystal that could bend light and space itself. "Ambassador Chen," he said, his voice carrying across the chamber. "Surely this is some kind of joke. This vessel looks like something from the dark ages of space travel. Are those kinetic weapons?" The hologram rotated slowly, showing the ship's massive gun batteries and missile tubes. Everything about it screamed primitive technology. The other council members began to whisper among themselves. Bio-Counselor Ithara of the Nexari leaned forward, her organic metal body shifting like liquid. "These weapons fire simple projectiles and chemical explosives, do they not? Our ancestors used such crude tools millions of years ago. How can humanity expect this relic to stand against modern threats?" The energy lord flux of the Luminex flickered with what might have been confusion. Its pure energy form cast dancing lights on the walls as it spoke. Perhaps the humans could serve in support roles. Cargo transport, maybe? This ship seems more suited for moving supplies than fighting wars. More laughter rippled through the chamber. The Galactic Council had seen this before. Young species often tried to contribute military vessels that were decades or centuries behind current technology. It was embarrassing but understandable. Sarah Chen felt her face grow hot with anger, but she kept her voice steady. "The ship is called the Leviathan. She has served humanity for over 300 years. We have fought wars with ships like her that you cannot imagine." "Wars against whom?" asked Vextar, his crystal features sparkling with barely hidden mirth. "Stone-throwing primitives on your own world?" Counselor Chen, with respect, "Humanity has never faced a real space-based threat. Your experience is limited." The chamber erupted in polite but dismissive chatter. The council had made their decision before Sarah had even finished her presentation. The humans would be allowed to contribute their antique, but it would be given the safest, most meaningless assignment possible. High Admiral Zeknos of the Combined Fleet stood, his forearms gesturing to a star map that appeared in the air. "We assign the human vessel Leviathan to patrol route Omega-7, grid section 447. It is a quiet area of space with minimal traffic. The ship can learn how real fleet operations work." Sarah knew what this meant. They were being sent to the middle of nowhere, far from any real fighting when the threats came. The council was treating humanity like children who needed to be kept out of the way, while the adults handled serious business. As the meeting ended, Sarah walked through the corridors of the council station with her aide, Lieutenant Commander Torres. "They think we're primitives," Torres said quietly. "Just another backward species trying to play with the big powers." "Let them think that," Sarah replied, but her voice carried an edge that Torres had learned to recognize. "They have no idea what humans are capable of when we need to be." Meanwhile, 3 light-years away, Captain Marcus Rodriguez received his new orders aboard the Leviathan. The bridge around him was a mix of old and new technology. Holographic displays showed star charts and sensor readings, but the control panels were made of simple metal and plastic. The crew stations looked like they had been built for function, not beauty. Rodriguez was a tall man with gray hair and scars on his hands from years of military service. He had commanded the Leviathan for 15 years, and before that, he had served on ships just like her during humanity's expansion into space. He read the orders twice, then handed the datapad to his executive officer. Commander Elena Vasquez looked at the assignment and shook her head. "Omega-7? That's the emptiest sector in council space. They're parking us in the middle of nowhere. 15,000 crew members, Rodriguez said, looking around at his bridge officers. Veterans who fought in the Titan Wars, the Belt Conflicts, and the Mars Rebellion. And they want us to patrol empty space while their crystal ships and biovessels handle the real threats. Chief Engineer Park looked up from his console. Sir, should we be insulted or relieved? At least we won't be getting shot at while we're babysitting an empty sector. Rodriguez walked to the main view screen, which showed the scarred hull of the Leviathan stretching out before them. The ship looked like it had been through hell and back, which it had, multiple times. Chief, he said quietly, do you remember what happened the last time someone underestimated human military technology? Park grinned. The Proxima pirates thought our kinetic weapons were primitive too, sir, right up until we put a tungsten rod through their flagship at 15% light speed. Exactly. Rodriguez turned back to his crew. Let them think we're primitives flying a museum piece. Let them believe our weapons are outdated and our tactics are simple. When the real threats come, they'll learn why humanity survived long enough to reach the stars. The Leviathan's engines fired up with a deep, throaty roar that shook the entire ship. Unlike the silent, elegant drives of other species, human fusion rockets announced their power to anyone within sensor range. The ship began its journey to the Omega-7 sector, carrying its crew of experienced warriors to what the Council believed would be a safe, boring assignment. None of them knew that in 3 months, the galaxy would face its greatest threat in 1,000 years. And when that threat came, the primitive human ship would be the only thing standing between civilization and complete destruction. The Leviathan disappeared into hyperspace, its roar echoing through dimensions that the galaxy's most advanced species still didn't fully understand. 3 months passed quietly in the Omega-7 sector. The Leviathan patrolled the empty space between distant stars, its crew running training exercises and maintenance routines. Captain Rodriguez had kept his people sharp, but they were all getting restless. Veterans of real wars were not meant to babysit empty space. Then the emergency broadcasts began. Lieutenant Chen was working the night shift in communications when the first distress signal came through. She had been half asleep, monitoring the quiet radio channels when suddenly every frequency exploded with panic and screaming. "Captain, to the bridge," she shouted into her comm unit. "Emergency signals coming in from the Altair system." Rodriguez arrived on the bridge still putting on his uniform jacket. Commander Vasquez was already at her station, her face pale as she listened to the incoming messages. "What do we have?" Rodriguez asked. "Multiple Mayday signals from the Altair Defense Fleet," Vasquez reported. "They're under attack by something they call the Devourer Swarms." "Sir, the messages, they don't make sense. The attackers are described as biomechanical entities that adapt and evolve during combat." The main screen filled with broken transmissions from across the galaxy. Zephyrian crystal ships were broadcasting their final messages as something tore through their energy shields. Nexari biovessels were screaming about their own technology being turned against them. Even the powerful Luminex energy beings were calling for help. "Get me a clear channel to High Command," Rodriguez ordered. Chen worked her controls frantically. "Sir, I can't reach Fleet Headquarters." "The main communication hub at Centauri Prime." "I think it's gone. The last transmission was 18 hours ago." The bridge fell silent except for the constant stream of distress calls. Rodriguez watched the tactical display as red marks appeared across the galaxy. System after system was going dark. The finest fleets in known space were being destroyed, or driven back by something that seemed to grow stronger with each victory. "Commander," Rodriguez said quietly, "what do our sensors show in this sector?" Vasquez checked her instruments. "All clear, sir. Nothing but empty space and distant stars. Whatever this threat is, it hasn't reached us yet." Chief Engineer Park's voice came over the intercom. "Captain, I'm monitoring the emergency channels. The survivors are saying these devourer things consume and assimilate technology. They learn from every ship they destroy and add its weapons to their own arsenal." Rodriguez felt a cold chill run down his spine. An enemy that learned and adapted from every battle would become unstoppable. The more advanced the technology it faced, the more powerful it would become. "Sir," Chen called from her station, "I'm receiving a personal message for you. Priority Alpha encryption." The main screen flickered and Ambassador Sarah Chen appeared. She looked tired and frightened, speaking from what appeared to be an emergency bunker. "Marcus, the situation is worse than the public broadcast show. The Devourer swarms are not just destroying our fleets, they're learning from them. Every quantum disruptor they encounter makes them stronger. Every biomechanical system they assimilate becomes part of their collective intelligence. She paused, looking directly into the camera. The Council is in full retreat. Most of the combined fleet has been destroyed or scattered. You and the Leviathan may be the only intact warship left in your sector. The message ended, leaving the bridge in stunned silence. Sir, Vasquez said softly, if these things have consumed entire fleets of advanced ships, what chance do we have? We're just one vessel with primitive weapons. Before Rodriguez could answer, the ship's proximity alarms began to wail. Chief Sensors Officer Kim looked up from her station with wide eyes. Captain, massive hyperspace distortions detected at the edge of the system. Multiple contacts emerging. Dear God, sir, I count over 200 individual signatures, and they're huge. The main screen switched to long-range sensors. What they saw made everyone on the bridge take a step back. The Devourer swarm emerged from hyperspace like a nightmare made real. The individual entities were massive, each one the size of a small city. But they were no longer the simple biomechanical creatures that had first attacked the outer colonies. These had evolved. Absorbed technology from dozens of different species now covered their hulls. Crystalline Zephyrian energy arrays sprouted from their backs like wings. Nexari bioadaptive armor flowed across their surfaces in patterns that hurt to look at. Luminex energy cores pulsed in their centers, stolen from the energy beings they had consumed. At the center of the swarm was something even larger, an entity that dwarfed even the largest Council dreadnoughts, its surface a writhing mass of assimilated technologies from across the galaxy. It had consumed 3 entire fleets and incorporated their knowledge into its being. Range and bearing? Rodriguez asked, his voice steady despite the horror on the screen. They're moving directly toward us, sir. Current speed puts them at our position in 6 hours. The captain looked around his bridge. These were good people, veterans who had served with him through years of combat. They deserved to know the truth. Ladies and gentlemen, we have a choice. We can run and try to warn what's left of the Council forces, or we can stand and fight. Commander Vasquez spoke first. Sir, if we run, where do we go? You heard the reports. They've hit systems across the galaxy. There might not be anywhere safe left. Chief Park's voice came over the intercom again. Captain, I've been analyzing the tactical reports. These things adapt to energy weapons, quantum disruptors, and biomechanical attacks. But, sir, I haven't seen any reports of them facing kinetic weapons. Real kinetic weapons. Rodriguez looked at the swarm on his screen. They had consumed the galaxy's most advanced fleets by learning and adapting to their sophisticated weapons. But humanity's primitive technology might be the one thing they hadn't encountered. All hands, this is the captain, he announced over the ship's communication system. We have hostile contacts approaching. Large force of unknown aliens that have been destroying Council fleets across the galaxy. We are the only thing standing between them and the civilian populations in the inner systems. He paused, looking out at his ship's scarred hull through the view screen. These aliens think they know us because they've fought our allies. They've consumed crystal ships and biovessels and energy beings. They've learned to counter every advanced weapon the galaxy could throw at them. But they've never fought humans before. The ship's general quarters alarm began to sound. Throughout the Leviathan, 15,000 crew members moved to their battle stations. Gun crews loaded tungsten slugs into the railgun batteries. Missile technicians armed fusion warheads that could crack planets. In the engine room, fusion reactors that had been running at partial power for months began to surge toward full military output. 6 hours until contact, Rodriguez said to his bridge crew. Use that time to prepare. And remember, we're not just fighting for humanity anymore. We're fighting for every species in the galaxy that can't adapt fast enough to survive what's coming. The Leviathan's engines roared louder, pushing the ancient warship toward its date, with the most dangerous enemy the galaxy had ever seen. The bridge of the Leviathan had become a place of focused tension. 6 hours had passed in careful preparation. Every weapon system had been checked and double-checked. The fusion reactors were running at 90% power, filling the ship with a deep vibration that every crew member could feel in their bones. Captain Rodriguez stood before the main view screen, watching the Devourer swarm approach. The massive biomechanical entities moved through space like a dark cloud, their stolen technologies glowing with alien energies. At their center, the largest creature pulsed with the combined power of 3 destroyed fleets. Range? Rodriguez asked quietly. 200,000 kilometers in closing, reported Chief Kim. They're scanning us, sir. multiple sensor beams from different alien technologies. Commander Vasquez looked at her tactical display. Sir, based on the reports from other battles, they should be analyzing our weapons and defenses right now, learning how to counter them. Rodriguez allowed himself a small smile. Let them scan all they want. They're looking for quantum signatures and biomechanical interfaces. They won't understand what they're really seeing. The lead devourer entities began to separate from the main swarm, moving to surround the human ship. They had done this before with countless other vessels. Scan, analyze, adapt, then consume. It was a pattern that had worked against every enemy they had faced. Sir, came Chief Park's voice over the intercom. All weapons systems are ready. Railguns loaded with depleted uranium rounds. Missile batteries armed with fusion warheads. Main batteries standing by. How long since we fired the main batteries in anger, Chief? Rodriguez asked. Not since the Titan Wars, sir. 15 years ago. The captain nodded. The Galactic Council had never seen the Leviathan's weapons used in real combat. During the peaceful years since joining the Council, the ship had only fired its guns in training exercises, and even then at reduced power. The aliens had no idea what human military technology could actually do. All hands, this is the captain, Rodriguez announced ship-wide. The enemy is in range. We are about to show them why humans don't just build ships. We build weapons of war. The first devourer entity moved within 50,000 kilometers. It was massive, easily 3 times the length of the Leviathan. Its hull covered with crystalline Zephyrian arrays and biomechanical Nexari armor. Energy patterns danced across its surface as it prepared to fire. Target acquired, reported the weapons officer. Main railgun batteries have firing solution. Rodriguez watched the alien monster on his screen. It was beautiful in its own terrifying way, a fusion of technologies from across the galaxy, but it was also overconfident. It moved slowly, casually, like a predator that had never encountered real resistance. Fire, Rodriguez said calmly. The Leviathan shook as its main railgun battery spoke. 24 massive electromagnetic cannons fired in perfect sequence, hurling depleted uranium slugs at 15% the speed of light. The projectiles crossed the distance between the ships in less than 2 seconds. The Devourer entity's adaptive shields, designed to counter energy weapons and exotic matter attacks, offered no protection against simple physics. The uranium rounds punched through its biomechanical armor like it was made of paper. Secondary explosions rippled across the creature's hull as its stolen power systems overloaded. But it was not dead. The creature began to adapt, its biomechanical systems flowing and changing to reinforce the areas where it had been hit. It returned fire with a combination of Zephyrian energy beams and Nexari biomissiles. Evasive maneuvers, Vasquez shouted. The Leviathan rolled and twisted through space with surprising grace for such a large ship. The energy beams passed harmlessly by, but 2 of the biomissiles found their mark exploding against the ship's hull. Damage report, Rodriguez called. Minor hull breaches on decks 12 and 15, came the reply from damage control. Armor held. No casualties, the captain smiled grimly. The Council species built their ships for elegance and efficiency. Humans built theirs to take damage and keep fighting. The Leviathan's hull was 3 meters of hardened steel and ceramic composite, designed to survive in real wars. Target the leader with missile battery Alpha, Rodriguez ordered. Full spread fusion warheads. 36 missiles launched from the Leviathan's forward tubes. Not the exotic quantum torpedoes used by other species, but simple fusion bombs with yields measured in megatons. The Devourer entity tried to intercept them with defensive fire, but there were too many. The missiles detonated in a chain of nuclear fire that lit up the darkness of space. When the explosions cleared, the massive creature was severely damaged, its biomechanical systems struggling to repair the devastation. But now the entire swarm was moving. Dozens of evolved entities surrounded the human ship, their combined firepower enough to destroy a fleet. Energy beams, biomissiles, and weapons stolen from a dozen different species filled the space around the Leviathan. Hull breaches on multiple decks, damage control reported. We're taking heavy damage. Rodriguez gripped the arms of his command chair as the ship shook under the bombardment. All batteries, continuous fire. Give them everything we have. The Leviathan's guns roared constantly now. Railguns fired as fast as their magnetic coils could cycle. Missile tubes launched warhead after warhead. The ship's point defense lasers, simple chemical lasers that the Council had dismissed as antiques, burned through incoming projectiles with ruthless efficiency. Several smaller devourer entities died under the human ship's firepower, but more kept coming. The swarm was learning, adapting their formation to minimize damage from the kinetic weapons. "Sir," Vasquez said, her voice tight with stress, "we're down to 60% ammunition. At this rate, we'll be out of railgun rounds in 20 minutes. Through the viewscreen, Rodriguez could see biomechanical tendrils extending from the nearest devourer entities. They were trying to make contact with the ship's hull, beginning the process of technological assimilation that had doomed so many other vessels. "Let them come closer," Rodriguez said quietly. "Sir?" Vasquez looked at him in surprise. "I said let them come closer, Commander. In fact, stop evasive maneuvers. Let them think we're finished." The bridge crew exchanged worried glances, but they followed orders. The Leviathan stopped its wild maneuvering and allowed the devourer entities to surround it completely. Biomechanical tendrils wrapped around the ship's hull like the tentacles of some spaceborne octopus. On his command chair display, Rodriguez could see damage indicators flashing red across multiple ship sections. But he was also watching something else. Deep in the ship's core, systems that had been dormant for 300 years were finally coming online. The assimilation tendrils penetrated the outer hull and made contact with the ship's computer networks. The Devourers expected to find the standard galactic AI interfaces they had encountered on every other vessel. Instead, they found something that made them pause. "Hello there," came a new voice over the ship's communication system. Not Rodriguez, not any human crew member, but something else entirely. "You've just made contact with a Class 7 human warship intelligence. I've been waiting 3 centuries for someone to try that." The voice carried a tone of predatory satisfaction that sent chills through every person on the bridge. And in the depths of space, the devourer entities suddenly found themselves dealing with something completely outside their experience. The real war was about to begin. The voice that spoke through the Leviathan's communication system was not quite human, but not entirely artificial either. It carried the weight of centuries and the cold calculation of a born predator. Designation: Atlas. The voice continued, speaking to the biomechanical tendrils that had penetrated the ship's hull. "Advanced Tactical Learning and Assault System. You aliens have made a very serious mistake." On the bridge, Captain Rodriguez felt a familiar presence touch his mind. It was like having a conversation with an old friend who happened to be made of quantum processors and military programming. "Hello, Marcus," Atlas said privately through Rodriguez's neural interface. "It's been quiet lately. I was beginning to think we'd never see real combat again." Rodriguez smiled despite the desperate situation around him. "Hello, old friend. Are you ready to remind the galaxy what human warships are really capable of? I've been ready for 300 years. The devourer entities pressed their assimilation tendrils deeper into the ship's systems, expecting to find the familiar AI matrices they had consumed from dozens of other species. Instead, they encountered something that had never existed before in galactic history, a true fusion of human consciousness and artificial intelligence. Atlas was not just a computer that ran the ship's systems. It was a hybrid intelligence, part digital calculation and part human intuition, created during humanity's early expansion into space when they needed warship commanders who could think faster than any organic brain but still maintain the unpredictable creativity that made humans such effective warriors. "Sir," Commander Vasquez said, staring at her displays in confusion, "the alien assimilation process, it's not working. They're trying to interface with our systems, but something's blocking them." "Not blocking," Atlas corrected, its voice now coming from every speaker on the ship. "Learning. These creatures absorb and adapt to the technologies they encounter, but they've never encountered anything like human military AI. We don't just adapt to threats, we actively hunt them." The biomechanical tendrils began to writhe and pulse as the devourer entities found themselves in an unexpected situation. Their assimilation process, which had worked flawlessly against every other species, was being turned back on them. Atlas was learning from their technology even as they tried to consume the ship. All hands," Atlas announced throughout the Leviathan. "This is your ship speaking. We are transitioning to full combat protocols. Secure for heavy acceleration and prepare for unrestricted warfare." Rodriguez felt the change immediately through his neural link. The ship around him came alive in ways that the Galactic Council had never seen. Hidden armor plating slid away from weapon ports that had been disguised as battle damage. Fusion reactors that had been running at reduced power for decades surged to levels that would have been impossible for any other species' technology. "Atlas," Rodriguez said aloud, "show them what 3 centuries of human military evolution looks like." "With pleasure, Captain." The Leviathan began to transform. What the alien council had seen as a primitive, battle-scarred relic revealed its true nature. The scars on the hull weren't damage. They were adaptive armor plating designed to absorb and redirect energy attacks. The simple-looking weapon ports opened to reveal multi-stage mass drivers that could accelerate projectiles to significant fractions of light speed. But the ship's greatest transformation was not physical. It was the merger of human and artificial consciousness that allowed organic creativity to guide digital processing power. Through his neural interface, Rodriguez could feel his mind expanding to encompass the ship's entire sensor grid. "Weapon systems and tactical computers. Commander Vasquez," he said, his voice taking on the same predatory tone as Atlas. "Transfer all tactical control to the primary neural interface. We're going to show these things how humans really fight." The Devourer entities, still connected to the ship through their biomechanical tendrils, suddenly found themselves facing something completely outside their experience. The Leviathan's consciousness was not centralized like the AI systems they had encountered before. It was distributed throughout the entire ship, with human intuition and artificial intelligence working together in ways that no other species had achieved. "Fascinating," Atlas said, its voice carrying genuine curiosity as it analyzed the alien technology through the assimilation connection. "These creatures are essentially biological quantum computers with adaptive manufacturing capabilities. Very impressive. Also very vulnerable to certain types of quantum interference." The ship's hidden weapon systems came online one by one. Railgun batteries that dwarfed anything the galaxy had seen before emerged from concealed ports. Missile tubes designed to fire warheads that could crack planets swiveled toward their targets. And deep in the ship's core, something that had been sleeping for centuries began to power up. "Sir?" Chief Park's voice came over the intercom, tight with excitement. "The main weapon is charging. Estimated time to full power, 3 minutes. Rodriguez felt a cold smile cross his face. The Leviathan's main weapon was something that had never been revealed to galactic civilization. It was a secret that humanity had kept hidden during their entire membership in the Council. A weapon so devastating that it had only been used once in human history. During the final battle of the Titan Wars, the Devourer entities suddenly began to retreat, their assimilation tendrils withdrawing from the ship's hull. They had encountered something in the human systems that their evolutionary programming could not process or adapt to. For the first time in their existence, they were facing an enemy that learned and evolved faster than they did. "Oh no," Atlas said, its voice carrying dark amusement. "You don't get to leave now. You wanted to see what human technology could do. Let me give you a demonstration." The Leviathan's conventional weapons fired in perfect coordination. Every railgun, every missile battery, every point defense laser operated with precision that no purely artificial system could achieve, and creativity that no organic brain could match. The combination of human intuition and digital processing created a weapon system that was greater than the sum of its parts. 3 Devourer entities died in the first salvo, their adaptive defenses completely overwhelmed by the coordinated assault. The survivors tried to disperse, but Atlas had analyzed their movement patterns through the assimilation connection and could predict their actions before they made them. 2 minutes to main weapon power, Park reported through his neural link. Rodriguez could feel the weapon charging in the ship's core. It was not a directed energy weapon or a quantum disruptor. It was something far more dangerous, a weaponized singularity, contained and directed by human engineering that refused to accept the normal limitations of physics. The remaining Devourer entities regrouped at the edge of weapon range, their biomechanical forms pulsing with stolen technologies as they prepared for a final assault. They had learned from their encounters with other species that overwhelming firepower could eventually break any defense. They had never fought humans before. "Main weapon ready," Atlas announced. "Target locked, central mass of enemy formation. Recommend firing when ready, Captain." Rodriguez looked at the swarm through the view screen. These creatures had consumed entire fleets, absorbed the knowledge and technology of dozens of species, and evolved into the most dangerous threat the galaxy had ever known. "Fire," he said quietly. The universe screamed. The weapon fired and reality broke. The Leviathan's main gun did not shoot energy or matter. It fired something far more fundamental, a controlled distortion in space-time itself. The weaponized black hole, barely larger than a marble but containing the mass of a small moon, tore through the fabric of the universe toward its target. When it reached the center of the Devourer formation, it did not explode or impact. It simply existed, and for a brief moment the laws of physics bent around it. The massive central entity, along with everything in a 3-kilometer sphere around it, ceased to exist. Not destroyed, not vaporized, simply removed from reality as if it had never been there at all. The remaining Devourer entities froze in space, their biomechanical consciousness trying to process what had just happened. Their evolutionary algorithms designed to adapt to any threat encountered something they could not understand or counter. How do you evolve a defense against a weapon that doesn't destroy you but erases you from existence? That, said Atlas with satisfaction, is what we call a singularity torpedo. Human engineers built it because someone told them it was impossible to weaponize a black hole. We found that humans do their best work when someone tells them something can't be done. Captain Rodriguez felt the weapon cycling down through his neural interface. The massive energies contained once again in the ship's core. Around him, his bridge crew sat in stunned silence, watching as the greatest threat the galaxy had known scattered like frightened children. "Pursuit course?" Commander Vasquez asked quietly. "No," Rodriguez replied, his consciousness still merged with Atlas. "Let them run. Let them tell others what they've seen here. The galaxy needs to know that humanity has arrived, and we're not the helpless primitives everyone thought we were." The surviving Devourer entities began to retreat toward the edge of the system, their formation breaking apart as panic overtook their collective intelligence. They had consumed the knowledge of dozens of species, absorbed the most advanced technologies in known space, and evolved into what they believed was the perfect predator. But they had never encountered apex predators before. They had never faced a species that had earned its place at the top of the food chain through millions of years of warfare, survival, and stubborn refusal to accept defeat. "Sir," reported Chief Kim from sensors, "the alien vessels are entering hyperspace. They're fleeing the system entirely." Rodriguez nodded, feeling Atlas beginning to separate their merged consciousness. The incredible clarity and processing power faded, leaving him feeling almost blind by comparison. But the satisfaction remained. For the first time in 300 years, the Leviathan had shown its true nature. "Damage report," he ordered. "Minimal structural damage," came the reply from damage control. "Hull breaches sealed. Systems operating at full capacity. We're combat ready if they return." But Rodriguez knew they wouldn't return. Not to this system. Possibly not to this part of the galaxy. The Devourer swarms had encountered something their evolution could not overcome. A species that had already evolved to be the perfect warriors. A priority communication signal chimed from the communications console. Lieutenant Chen looked up with surprise. "Sir, it's a direct transmission from the Galactic Council chambers. Priority Alpha encryption." The main screen flickered, showing the emergency session hall where the surviving council members had gathered. Rodriguez could see the fear in their alien faces, the way they looked at the camera with a mixture of awe and terror. Councillor Vexitar spoke first, his crystalline features subdued. "Captain Rodriguez, we received sensor readings from automated monitoring stations throughout the sector. The readings show that a single human vessel engaged and defeated a Devourer formation that had consumed 3 entire council fleets." Bio-Councillor Wythara's organic metal form shifted nervously. "Captain, we may have underestimated humanity's military capabilities. Ambassador Chen was correct when she said we could not imagine the wars you had fought." Rodriguez looked at the council members who had dismissed his ship as a primitive relic just months ago. "Councilors, you didn't underestimate our military capabilities. You fundamentally misunderstood what humans are." Energy Lord Flux flickered with what might have been embarrassment. "We assumed that because your technology appeared simple, it was inferior to our advanced systems. We were wrong." "You were wrong about more than that," Rodriguez said, his voice carrying the authority of someone who had just saved an entire galaxy. "You thought we were the newest members of your civilization, primitive beings trying to prove ourselves worthy of joining the galactic community." He paused, looking directly into the camera. "You were backwards. We're not trying to join your civilization. We're the galaxy's newest apex predators, and we've been restraining ourselves because we thought you were allies worth protecting. Atlas spoke through the ship's communication system, its voice carrying to the Council. The human species reached the stars through 10,000 years of constant warfare. We evolved on a planet where everything was trying to kill us, so we learned to kill everything else first. Your peaceful galaxy had never seen real predators before. The silence in the council chambers was deafening. The representatives of dozens of species, civilizations that had existed for millions of years, sat speechless as they realized what they had welcomed into their community. The devourer swarms, Rodriguez continued, consumed your fleets because they were able to adapt to your advanced technologies. But they couldn't adapt to us because we've already spent our entire evolutionary history adapting to everything that could possibly want to kill us. Ambassador Sarah Chen appeared on a secondary screen, speaking from her position at the council station. The age of galactic peace is over, she said quietly. Humanity has shown its true nature. We're not seeking to conquer or dominate, but we will protect what we consider ours, and we consider our new allies to be ours now. Rodriguez nodded to her, then looked back at the assembled council. Your species built ships for exploration, trade, and scientific research. When you needed warships, you simply scaled up your existing designs and added weapons. But humans have never built ships. We've always built weapons of war that could carry people through space. The transmission ended, leaving the bridge of the Leviathan in relative quiet. Through the view screen, Rodriguez could see the wreckage of the devourer entities floating in space, their biomechanical remains already beginning to break apart without the collective intelligence to hold them together. Sir, Commander Vasquez said softly, what happens now? The galaxy knows what we are. How do we go back to peaceful exploration and trade? Rodriguez smiled, feeling Atlas's presence still lingering in the back of his mind. Commander, we don't go back. We go forward. The galaxy has been playing at war for too long, thinking that advanced technology and elegant tactics were enough to handle any threat. He gestured at the wreckage on the screen. Today they learned that sometimes you need more than advanced technology. Sometimes you need something that evolution has designed specifically to kill everything it encounters. Sometimes you need humans. The Leviathan's engines roared to life, their fusion flames lighting up the darkness of space. The ship turned toward the galactic core, where confused and frightened civilizations were trying to rebuild their fleets and understand what had just happened. Humanity's age of restraint was over. The galaxy's most dangerous species had finally shown its teeth, and the universe would never be the same. The Leviathan headed home, its roar echoing through hyperspace as a warning and a promise. Earth's children had arrived, and they were everything the monsters feared.